Hey everybody, welcome to Love and Reload, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I'm joined by my co-host, Sandy McKinney over here. Hey Sandy,
Hi,
how's it going?
Great to be here, Ben. Excited
It's
for
so good to
today's
have
show.
you.
Yes.
I'm loving these Thursdays. I'm getting like jazzed up on a Thursday. We're going to be doing this for a while. This mentorship series that you've put together has been phenomenal. I can't wait to do it. I'm going to let you do your thing here. Really quickly, we want to introduce Shayla King from Molex down there. Hey, Shayla.
Hello,
There we go.
hello.
And Mike Quigley down there from Ace Relocation Systems.
Hello,
Hey,
everyone.
Mike. Look at this. What a great group. Sandy, what are we going to be talking about today?
Oh, it's probably my biggest passion that I have today. We're going to be talking about the positive mindset and how that impacts each of us in each of our roles. So as young professionals that we're looking forward to mentor and really try to make a difference in their lives, it's obviously meant for you, but it's meant for all of us because we all hit periods of our careers and our lives where we fall back into what I call our home, our emotional home, and we go back into that I'm not good enough, our limiting beliefs that we've previously talked about. And so as a result of that, it's what are your daily habits? What are your rituals? And I have brought, and I'm so blessed to have two of the experts that you're going to really, it's a treat today. You're going to get a lot out of this session today. So with Shayla and Mike, I'm so excited to have them.
And right now, everybody, I want you to hit that like button right now. Give our panelists a virtual round of applause. Hit that little green, smash that button a bunch of times. That's awesome. Also, get active in the comments over there. Let us know, questions, comments. Let us know what you do around positive mindset. Sandy, I'm going to kind of be focusing on these comments over here, and I'm going to kind of keep them coming a little bit. And then from every once in a while, if it's all right, maybe take a couple questions from the audience.
Absolutely. I'd love that. And we're prepared to take the questions. So let's get started. And, today's objective is really part one series of the mentoring program that Ben has been so gracious to give the platform to this program. And we decided that we were going to start with the positive mindset. And so with that, let's just get in, and Shayla, let's talk a little bit about how did you really get interested in this subject matter? I know I follow you on LinkedIn, and Shayla is constantly providing such value-added information that I just felt it was so important that you come and share with us how you've really got started with that and where, how you maintain it on a daily basis.
Yeah, perfect. And Sandy, thanks for having me.
Sure.
So my grandpa had a saying, and it was in my house as a child, and it said, any man can smile when life goes along like a song, but the man worthwhile is the man with a smile when everything goes dead wrong. Right. So growing up with that and this like insanely positive father definitely like set me on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was the guy who would like wake up in the morning and say, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. My son would say, what's the matter? It's 4:30 in the morning. He goes, have you ever seen this good looking of a guy and this early in the morning? Right. So that's what I grew up with. Somebody who was that kind of happy and zestful about life, even when things got really hard. And I don't mean toxic positivity, like let's pretend everything's all good when it's not.
Right.
But what I mean is that we have so much more control than we give ourselves credit for our thoughts and our beliefs and how we deal with situations.
Absolutely.
And so I think that was probably like the foundational piece, Sandy. And then I am obsessed with learning. And when I was 17, I became a manager at MCI WorldCom. They were the second Enron, if you aren't familiar.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't end up well, but but during that time, I started getting obsessed with reading business and leadership books. And I was introduced to something that was called Thinking Your Way to Success by Michael Klaus. And it was largely made for like direct sales areas, but he brought me through history and everything from the beginning of time of major authors, major philosophers who talked about the power of the mind. Mm-hmm. And as part of that, you learn the history and then you learn daily exercises to start to be aware of your thoughts and start to disrupt them. And so I just listened to that every single day, starting at 17. And over time, it truly did change my life by learning how to first see my thoughts and then second, interrupt them. right? And realize that you can't be in control. So I'd say that's probably where it started for me, and it's a continual journey. So what I do now, and I have a program that's for working moms, and it's specifically on mastering your mindset. And in that program, the first thing that we talk about is we spend 2 solid weeks just on awareness. Most people are so on autopilot, right, that you don't even actually realize the thought that you're having. And what was really fascinating to me recently is there's a ton of research about how many thoughts we have in a day, right? Which are like a bazillion. But what I didn't realize was 90% of our thoughts are exactly the same as yesterday.
Wow.
Right? So if we're in this negative spiral and saying these negative things, we're going to say the same crap to ourselves tomorrow, right? Unless we intentionally interrupt it. And so that's why we spend that first 2 weeks just getting aware of what those thoughts even are. Yeah,
Shayla, it's almost like thoughts are habits is kind of what you're telling me. And so we just like we create good physical habits, we can create good thought habits too, it sounds like.
100%.
Manifest your own reality.
Absolutely. Well, let's and we're going to get into how this all obviously impacts the mobility space. And Shayla's been with us in the mobility space for a number of years, and it's now over at Molex. So we'll get into that in a few minutes. But Mike, let's talk about a little bit about your journey, which has been a little bit different than Shayla's. When you hear that awesome upbringing, Shayla, of how you had that positivity and how that just permeates in a person. Mike, your story is a little bit different than that. So why don't you share how you got started and how it was so important for you to create this mindset?
Totally different. Didn't have the dad who popped in all bright and cheery. I got into the business about 34 years ago. I did okay. Wasn't doing great, muddling through, surviving. But I got myself into a pretty bad situation. It was probably about 25 years ago. And I found myself without a place to live. And I was living in a trailer in somebody's backyard. So it was pretty tough. So I went early in my career from being homeless with a 3-year-old child in a 12-foot trailer to recognizing that I had to make some changes in my life. And a lot of that came with my faith, love of family. And I had to change my mindset, change my habits. I had to train my mind. I had to figure out a way to stop the corrosive thinking that I wasn't good enough and that I couldn't do it. And I started a series of motivational videos to get me out of it. And some of what I listened to, not to dwell on the past, but more so to reflect on the times that I don't want to go back to. And it gives me a better appreciation for where I'm at now and the journey to get here. And that is what I like sharing with the younger folks in the industry and people within our company that want to know, is it the red pill? Is it the green pill? What is it that you take to become successful? And it really is just understanding that you have the ability, you have the skill, you have the knowledge. You just have to be able to unlock your mind and allow that to happen.
Well, it's interesting because when you look at these two stories, Ben, right? I mean, they're so vastly different. And that's the beauty of what a positive mindset can do, because it really, we're not dependent on where we came from. It's strictly our choice, like Shayla said, on how we move forward and embrace the positive mindset.
Yeah, and also, I mean, that a positive mindsets are, an outfit that goes with any occasion, right? It's like, whether you're, kind of rock bottom situation, or you were kind of blessed to have this imbued in you as a value early on. Mike, when you were talking about your situation, like that really resonated with me, because there was a time when I was kind of homeless when I was actually in college. And I was between homes, and I was wondering where my next meal was going to come from, where I was going to get some money. And you when you're desperate like that, you have some really, you have some bad thoughts, it's a tough situation. It's a desperate spot, that's really cool that you found faith in that moment and were able to kind of bounce back. When you talk about the negative kind of talk tracks a little bit, I really appreciate you sharing that. And I guess my question would be, for people out there that don't believe that they can do it and that are a victim of imposter syndrome. And I think we've all kind of, had that moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you like snap? What's that momentary, like, do you have a mantra for that? Do you have something you tell yourself when you feel like creeping in? Because I'm sure it's not I'm sure that wasn't an issue that you dealt with a long time ago that never crept back up again.
It does creep in. It crept in during COVID, right? So you found yourself what you thought was going to be in a helpless situation. And turns out, I mean, there was a lot of good that came from it for me, actually, a lot of reflection. And I found myself, it gave me an opportunity to go back to the core that helped me get out of that hole, right? I had lost a couple of RFPs. I was questioning my abilities. Am I still being, have I run my course in this, 34 years? Is it time to hang it up? And then things just started exploding because I put back into place what had slowly crept away from me. Mm-hmm. And it's funny. We, my wife and I reflect on this journey every Friday night. Mm-hmm. My wife follows Mel Robbins, and she helps her with staying positive, and it creates this kind of I don't know if it sounds corny, but this aura throughout the house, and it bleeds over to the kids, and it bleeds over to the neighbors, and it bleeds over to our friends, where they start getting positive thoughts just by the positive communication that they're getting through us. And we reflect back on where we were. We remember the times when she used to call me and say, hey, don't go to the ATM today, because there's $20 left in the account. And of course, then she'd call me and say, I just got a notice that you're at the ATM at 7-Eleven. You pulled out the last 20. So being able to reflect on that, I mean, we're not rich. We have a good life, but we appreciate everything. We've put in a lot of hard work, and as a team, as a family, we've been able to be successful. And I want to be able to share that with other people.
How about you, Shayla? I mean, it's I think some people assume when you come up in a family like you explained with your dad that it's just an automatic thing, and that's not the case. So
no, it's not. And let's be very clear. My dad is extremely positive. He's one family member, right? Now I had a grandma that was so worried that every time the phone rings, she was sure that meant somebody was, somebody in our family was having an emergency. Or every time an ambulance would go by and she lived next to a hospital, certainly my uncle had gotten into an accident, right? So I had a lot of people who practice different habits as well. But I think part of, Ben, your question was, when you have those thoughts, how do you interrupt them? So what we talk about in our program is the first thing you want to do is see your thoughts. Then you want to interrupt them and figure out how you can stop the spiral. There is a lot of neuroscience behind this. And if we let our negativity go too long, then you can't pull it back. Yeah. So part of it is learning to interrupt them quicker at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And so we always start with smaller things, right? Like the root thing that you've been dealing with for 30 years isn't going to be our first step, right? Let's start to get the idea of these little things. So I'll give you an example. And I think, Mike talked about earlier being able to build up that muscle. That's exactly what it is. And once you've started to build it up, you can see people in society where you're like, whew, wow, that has to be a hard life because there's been no effort there at all. So I was in the grocery store the other day and I heard this woman go, oh, like super loud, right? I'm like, what happened? Oh, I got, and I look over and I thought like, the orange juice broke and went all over her purse right. And like over her whole like cart. And I look over and her purse just fell, right? Like her purse fell from the top of the cart to down and she just had to grab her purse and put it back up. Nothing even fell out. Like your purse fell. And so I remember, right. So I remember in that moment, just thinking like, I would have never noticed it happened. right?
Mhm.
I would have never even, I just would have grabbed it because we get to decide where our brain goes all the time. And so it's not like how much it would have annoyed me. You start to have things not even on your radar, right? Whereas like, think about the life that this human must have when they have that much of an emotional response to something that's so small.
Right.
So I think back to your point, Ben, let's start with the small stuff, right? Let's start by not getting annoyed when our purse drops, because who cares, right? And then you can start to kind of build up that tool set.
Yeah, the brain can be a destructive weapon, or it can be a tool that you can utilize to better yourself. And I mean, it can, your mind can make your body ill.
Yeah.
Your mind can do some really crazy things, but you can control what it does if you choose to.
Yeah. And I think, people who go through hard times and people who go through addiction and can get over that addiction, they find literally has a stronger mental aptitude than others. And so, what's going through my mind when the purse is dropping is I'm an Army veteran, right? And so we had a saying, if you're not heading to Iraq today, it's not a bad day. Right. and I really struggled when I came back from the Army and got back into civilian life, and you hear a friend complaining because the toast burnt or the clothes didn't dry.
Mhm.
Right. And so it can be really frustrating because you've seen bigger problems.
Mhm.
And I think like Mike's talking about going through those hard times, and what you mentioned, Ben, is it does make things seem like not a big deal when you compare them.
Mhm.
And so what we want to do is be able to build up that skill set to do on the little stuff. So then we can start applying it to bigger things.
Shayla, you talk about, what I'm hearing you say is kind of like about perspective, right? Like if you're not going to Iraq, it's not a bad day. Yeah. So if you're not going to Iraq, it's a good, I forgot, I messed it up. I get the point. I'm not going to Iraq. I'm good.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
Well, so so that's all about perspective. Now you have that perspective from being an Army veteran, right? And actually having that, mentality, right? Most of us don't wake up like, hey, at least I'm not in Iraq. Where do people who don't have that perspective in their personal history, where do you draw that from? Mike has his story, you have your story, I have stories. I mean, and maybe everybody has stories, but how do you find that perspective?
Yeah. And I think perspective is part of it. And so, in the maturity model of how you build up this kind of mental stamina, there definitely is something about gratitude and something about perspective and reflection. Mm-hmm. But I think more of it is, there's a speaker, I can't remember who said this first, but it was, people are in bad moods and are pissed off for no good reason. Why not be happy for no good reason?
For no good reason, yeah.
Right. And so when those thoughts come, then instead of even saying I should feel grateful because X person's suffering more than me, instead I try to ask myself, like, I don't have to be here. I have the freedom to think about anything I want. So if this subject isn't making me feel good, why on earth do I want to think about it? Mm-hmm. And I struggle with that still. And I notice that a lot at bedtime, right? So that's when I go through the list of whatever went wrong in the day, or the business problem I could have solved in a different way, or why did they say that it wasn't logical, or whatever the heck it is in your life. And you're like, wait a minute, is rehashing this incident, is that going to add to my life? Am I going to be happier by thinking through this again or not? And if not, what's something that would make me happy? Let me go anywhere I want in my head, because we have that freedom. And so, you guys have all heard like something terrible happened in traffic, right? And this guy was a jerk and this happened and blah, blah, blah. Like, and people love to retell these stories. You won't believe what happened to me today, right? And they're like going into, why?
Guilty.
Why, right?
Yeah.
We're all guilty. It's not, but thinking about like the situation sucked the first time. Why would I want to think about it again?
Why relive it?
So part of it's just noticing your energy. And is this subject bringing me up or down?
Well, and Shayla, I know the studies of Tony Robbins, and Tony always talks about that emotional home of where we all go to when those bad situations come up. And but he also teaches us that you can change that in a nanosecond.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what you're sharing, is how you change that thinking in a nanosecond. So to your point, Mike, COVID hits, you're a salesperson in this environment. We can no longer go and see Shayla or any other corporate member to to build relationships, to continue our sales process. So we begin to fall back into that emotional home of, oh my gosh, this is happening to us. And instead, we can snap out of it and say, how can I make that change? And Ben, you and I talked about that a lot, about limiting beliefs and in having encouraging beliefs and what we can do about it. So let's kind of shift a little bit. Go ahead.
I want to know from you, Sandy, what is your favorite way to snap out of it? What do you do?
I go back to the triad that Tony taught us. And that triad is it's physiology. So you have to get moving, whatever that looks like. So for me, that's moving first thing in the morning, going and working out and getting my head. The other leg is strictly focusing on what I need to accomplish, and not letting those cat videos, which I can go right to, come into our space, but creating the opportunity to really focus on what we need to do. And then lastly, and I've said this really to a very good friend of mine yesterday who called me and said, Sandy, I need help. Number one, I said, thank you for reaching out. So many people are going through challenges today and they don't reach out. So I invite the entire audience to really think about that. Brene Brown has great books on vulnerability. And I know, Shayla, you
don't get me started, right?
I know. And Mike and Ben, you both have been very vulnerable in this show alone. Mm-hmm. That vulnerability allows us to reach out to somebody when we need that help. So that third of that leg of that triangle is really the meaning behind the language we give each other. And not only what I share with you, but also what I do to myself and the language I give myself. And so I'm no longer like, oh, it's happening again. Here it goes. Here goes the momentum out the window. I'm not going to be able to hit those goals. I'm not going to be able to do that. And Ben, we shared that before. It's being able to snap out of that and say, no, I go back to the roots, Mike, that you talked about in my foundation of what I do every day. And I know, Shayla, you know this. I do my 15 minutes priming every day where I bring that positive mindset, that energy into me. So moving, focus, and the language we use, that is so critical on how you keep and you snap out of that very quickly.
Let's see what people are saying here in the comments. Question: how do you snap out of a negative mindset? What tips, tricks do you employ to snap out of a negative mindset? We got a couple comments in here. Let's see what people are saying here. Janet says, I start my day with a daily devotion, sets my day and attitude straight. Mm-hmm. Love that. There's a lot of peace in that. That's awesome. Erica, I know Erica. She says, I dance. Go ahead, Erica.
Absolutely.
It is so hard to be in a bad mood when you're dancing, right?
I literally met Erica on the dance floor. I met Erica on the dance floor in Columbus, Ohio. Yeah.
And nobody was in a bad mood.
I will tell you, this industry dances more than any other industry I have been in. I have talked to my friend Jack about how surprised I was at some of the first global mobility conferences I went to and that dance floor. So,
oh yeah, Jack gets it popping out there on the dance floor too. I've seen Jack out there. See you, Jack Jampel. All right, that's great. Janet says our thoughts give others words meaning. Our thoughts give others words meaning.
Yeah. And think about that for a minute. The importance, because I catch myself sometimes, even in my family life, I'll say something or I may bark something out. And then it's like, whoa, and I'll get a gentle reminder. Can we choose our language a little different? And it's like, of course we can. Of course we can. And, I said this on one of the shows, Ben, Brendan Bouchard said, what do you do today that's different, that you can really make a difference with what's going on in the world, all the challenges? He said, double down on kindness. And that can't be more true today.
You know what? It's funny I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead. Okay. Kindness. When I'm feeling down, so I suffer from imposter syndrome quite a bit. As a person who's chronically putting themselves out there not every day, but almost seems like every other day. It seems like one day I'm here, one day I'm here, one day I'm here, and this just seems like the pendulum swings like that for me, right?
Yeah.
And so I'd say every other day, every third day, I'm probably struggling with, am I good enough? Should I even be doing this? Is this even, whatever, right? The whole track, right? I don't need to repeat it. And the one thing I've noticed always that snaps me out of it is doing something for someone else. Mm-hmm. When I do something for someone else, it could be a mentor, it could be mentoring them, piece of advice, could be a donation, could be raising money, it could be my wife and kids, right? As soon as I do something for someone else, I find so much value in that moment that validates me. And then yeah, exactly. Because then I'm like, okay, Ben, hold up. Now your purpose is helping others, serving others, right? Being blessed to be a blessing to other people. Because whenever I'm in that, am I good enough mode? It's because I'm thinking about me.
Yes. And so, especially with some of the stuff that you're doing, like here and online, is sometimes we can come and we can say, well, do they think I'm good enough? Do they think I'm credible enough? Do they think I'm interesting enough? They're not thinking about you. They're thinking, can you help me? Right. And so when you flip it, you're exactly right. So if we can I chat a little bit on imposter syndrome for just a second?
Please.
So I do go to Tony Robbins events. I go to every speaker's events. I take the good, right? You don't have to agree with all of it. They don't have to be this like role model, perfect human. You take the good, you leave the bad. But Rachel Hollis has a good storyline related to this imposter syndrome. So I want you to picture yourself and you're in Target. And this complete stranger walks up to you and says, your hair is a mess. That dress is ugly. You have no confidence. I don't know what you're doing. Right? What would you say to this complete stranger that comes up to you and says all of these things?
Get away.
Like, who the heck are you? Shut up.
I'd probably cuss at them. I'd cuss at them.
Yeah. Sorry you feel that way.
You do all of these things and tell them to shut up, right?
Yeah.
But we are that person in our own head, and we don't tell that mean Karen in our head to sit down and shut up. And that's what we have to do. We have to see it as, look, your thoughts are not who you are. Your thoughts are sentences that you repeat in your head, and you can change those sentences. And so in this scenario, what I think is so important to do is when you're getting that imposter syndrome and all those thoughts are coming up, separate yourself from those thoughts. Name your person. So in my program, we have you actually name. So is it Karen, or name whatever name you think is somebody kind of like annoying or evil in your life or in a movie or whatever, right? So choose the name and then notice when that person is speaking to you. They're the ones that are saying the things that aren't going to serve you, that aren't going to bring you to the higher level, that aren't going to allow you to serve others more. And when you hear those thoughts, you have to say, listen, Karen, right? We're not doing this today, right? Stop it. And then you can switch gears and say, my purpose is to serve people. How am I going to do that? To your point, Ben.
Yeah, my name is Prada. So when Prada comes up and those thoughts are there, I'm like, Prada, go put a different pair of shoes on because I'm not playing that game.
Not doing it. Love it.
Only shoes with red bottoms.
Oh my God.
Well, those I might wear.
No, that's fantastic. I love the whole naming because then it almost like disassociates that person, right? This person isn't Ben, this person is John or whatever, right? Yes. And now I can tell John the GTFO, okay? But and then I can still be Ben, right? I'm not like having this like inner struggle where I like hate myself. I hate this person over here and I put them over there. Yeah, I love that idea.
Do you ever have that feeling, because I get it, and I hope I'm not the only one, that when somebody says something like that, you feel sorry for them, that why would you need to be so negative towards another person? I don't get, what is the benefit behind it, right? So I almost want to sit down with the person and say, maybe it could have been done a different way, or maybe it could have been delivered. And you're right, I don't look great in these jeans, but do I really need to be told that?
I'm sorry, I said that to you, Mike. I didn't mean it. Okay.
It was more about my tie back at ERC 2020.
Yeah, no, I just think about hurt people, right? So that's it. Right. So I talk to my kids about it's about the other person, not about you. But the problem is that you guys have all heard the saying, we're the sum of the 5 people closest to us. But we're one of those 5, and we speak to ourselves more than the rest of the world combined. So when we talk about how to eliminate these negative influences in your life, yourself, your Karen, is the absolute most important one to master.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle Obama's when they go low, we go high.
Well, and
They want to, just always stay positive, regardless of the negativity that's thrown around you.
Yeah, and I love Michelle's quote. I use that all the time, and I also you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to.
Right.
Right. Like, you don't have to engage. Like, they want to be unhappy and angry. That's totally their choice. I'm going to be happy for no good reason.
Yeah. I love that, Shayla.
Which sometimes makes them more upset because you're not engaging.
But I don't know, because I'm not in that anymore. Right. Yeah. I kept driving.
It doesn't matter at that point. I think that's a great segue. Shayla, I want to ask you, what are some other top challenges that you've encountered with folks that are struggling with keeping a positive mindset that you've helped them with? I think the imposter syndrome is really big, Ben. And I think we all suffer from that at times.
So a lot of it, I would say, Sandy, is knowing how much control you can have over your life. So for women, one of the top things that we deal with is mom guilt, right? And all of these expectations for how you should act as a daughter and a family member, and all of this crap and weight we put on ourselves. And so one of the biggest things that we do is just talk about the freedom you actually have to design a life you love. And I don't care what that looks like. So that in all of my programs with my clients, it's about designing the life they want. It doesn't have to look anything like what I would want, right? And I don't care what it looks like. But it's so hard these days for women even to know what they truly want, because it's layered with all of this expectations from other people and what a good person's supposed to do. And so we do try to unpack a lot of that to truly know what you want in the first place, and then to know you deserve it unapologetically. And because you want it, and this is for men and women, right? Because you want it is enough. Right? And because it will make you happy is a good enough reason. And you don't have to justify it to anybody. So we do spend quite a bit of time kind of unpacking that. And then another category I'd say is we talk about some of the 5 influences around you. Those are people. They're also things. So after we've worked through how to improve your own personal mindset, it's what influences are influencing you, and realizing the power of media. Right. So even on your social, like, let's say that you want to get fit. And so on your social, you started following all those people. But when you look at those things, if they make you more depressed than motivated, unfollow. Right. Yeah. Like, these are all these little things, but they add up. If watching the news makes you depressed, guess what? You don't have to watch the news.
Right.
Yeah. And there's this whole argument about informed and Okay. So real quick, I'll go there. So you can be informed by watching 2 minutes a day if it's important for you to be informed. I would also argue you don't have to be informed, right? But think about your consumption and if it's serving you or if it's making you think about negative things that depress you.
Shayla, I love this.
Negative element.
I love what you're saying about, the news, for instance, right? Because I think the news makes a lot of us, whether it's local news or national news, and really by national news, I mean politics, right? And it's like, and to your point about not being informed, I mean, I think you can actually make a choice to not watch any news and live a very full life, to perfectly oblivious to the ridiculousness that goes on, 500 miles away in DC or wherever you are. Right. Yeah. So, because none of that really impacts you if you don't let it. And yet here we take these things that we're ingesting from the media and we bring them to the dinner table where now they actually do impact people we know and love. Right. Yeah. And so then it's like, it's such a bad cycle.
It is. And you guys, everyone has to figure out what their thing is. So it could be politics that really kind of downs your day. It could be a million different things, but figure out what it is for you. I mean, I haven't had TV or like local TV or cable in over 10 years, right? So I have not actually watched the 6 o'clock, 10 o'clock news in that long, and I'm surviving.
Right.
And I do think it's important. I'm also an activist and an advocate, and equality is really important to me. So I do want to stay informed on those topics. And so I choose the right mediums that serve me there. So I follow every, diversity and inclusion leader at major companies, and LinkedIn is my main source because I'm hearing it from the experts who are also passionate about changing it for the good. And so that's how I consume most of my equality news, right? But there's lots of ways to do that. But just say, whatever the subject is in the world, you don't have to talk about it. You don't have to think about it. It does not have to get your mind share. So does it improve your life, or does it drag you down and make you negative?
Right.
Yeah, this
It
is
all
great.
boils down to choice, right? So we have choices of what we will engage in. We have choices of negative people that we will be around. We have choices. Everything in our world is a choice, right? We choose to use a pen or a pencil, right? So think it through. Think through everything that you're going to do. How is that going to affect the person next to you? And it's so much easier to be nice and be positive than it is to be negative or to be mean. And then that person will absorb some of what you're doing and pass it on to the next person. Next thing you know, we're making a better world for everybody.
It's very contagious. There's no doubt about it. I think it truly, truly, truly we have the opportunity, to your point, Mike and Shayla, to bring the positivity into our lives every single day, and how we do that and how we share that with others is just so critical. Ben, you and I talked about when we were on the show, those 5 most influential people, the people you spend the most time with. And if you remember, we did the hand thing where part of them is your family and part of it is your circle of influence. And what do you do with those 2 hands? And remember that discussion?
Yeah, I do remember that discussion because there was people in my life, my life's changed a lot over the last couple of years. And there's people in my life because I'm a very loyal person, and I have friends that I've had for a long time. And there's people in my life that I feel like I want to keep there, or I have an obligation to, just out of loyalty and stuff. And that I don't like turn my back on my friends and things like that. Right. These are part of my ethos and my principles. Right. But then I also find myself outgrowing some of these relationships, and I'm wrestling with that.
Yeah.
And, and what did we talk about? We talked about the fact that family sits in that left hand, if you will, and you just love them to death because that's their family. They're always going to have unconditional love. But we go to that right hand of those people that we're going to get the inspiration, like Shayla, from, the people that we're going to learn from. And like my friend that reached out to me yesterday on my way home from the airport, we talked, and she said to me, and she's getting pretty emotional, and she says, Sandy, you're one of 4 people I immediately thought of that I knew I could call and have a conversation. And that's that core group. That's that group that, regardless, and I haven't spoken to her in, quite a long time. But she knew I would take the call. She knew I would be there for her. And we're setting up some continuing discussions to help her get that snap out of that state.
Can we stay here just for a second? Because Christina's saying I'd like some advice about those outgrown relationships.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. So, and I would maybe, Sandy, go a little bit past the way you divided it. So we can set boundaries in any area of our life. And to Mike's point, we have all these choices to make. And one of the biggest areas that I do coach on is setting those boundaries. Because Ben, you're right, it's hard. And we tie it up with who we are as a person. And a good person to us looks like loyalty and support and being there for people when they're going through hard times. And we feel like it's also this, well, I have a good life and they don't. And so I'm supposed to. And it feels so much duty is kind of all wrapped up into it. But even with family, I will challenge, you absolutely can set those boundaries. And not everyone in someone's family is a healthy relationship, right? And so not only can you exit those friend ones, you can exit those family ones. And I think that's really important for people to know that is okay. No one's going to do it flippantly. No good person is just going to say, doesn't really make my life additive. I'm only looking for positive people, so you're out. But you should do it with intention and think through what is better for you and your specific family unit. I will say who's done some great work with this is Glennon Doyle, and her latest book, Untamed, has a chapter where she talks through this and about how our real, my real ownership is to me and my children, and how do I make sure that they always have a positive environment. And so she has a really good chapter in there that talks about a mom who had the question and said, my son came out and my grandparents, they're not okay with it, but they're worried that he's going to have a tough life. So should I have them come in for Thanksgiving? Right. So that's heavy. That's a deep thing to consider. And what I loved about her advice was, if you come into my home and into my children's lives, these are our values. These are how we think about things. And we have supportive people in our circle. So if you can be fully on board and not project any of your concerns, you are absolutely welcome. If you cannot, you're not. Right.
I'm actually dealing with that. Right. So, and that sounds, face value, pretty hardcore, but there's a lot of reality to it. So people that are listening may say, wow, that's just a little bit, it's going a little bit too far. But some of you that are listening today might be in the same situation. When you said that, Shayla, it hit home with me because there are some family members that we have worked on. So we work on the family unit and our faith, and that's the core. My friends, my work, all of that comes secondary to our faith and our family core. But this is how we live our life, and we can try and influence you and help you and guide you along to bring you into a better space. At least what we feel is a better space. They may not think it's a better space, but at some point you have to realize that can't change. And I'm not willing in my house to change how we respect each other and how we treat each other, to allow a negative influence in the family to influence them. So there has been some cutoff. And believe me, when people, when was the last time we talked to my sister? Well, 20 years ago. She lives 20 miles from here. There was just no getting her to come around. So always welcome to entertain it again. But to me, much like you, Shayla, the most important thing to me is my wife and my children, and that's it. And if my other relationships might suffer, then they're probably not worth having those relationships if they're going to affect that positive core nucleus around me.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter how somebody defines that. It matters that they do. Right. So intentionally deciding what your priorities are and what your core is, and then being relentless about putting things in your life that support that and not allowing things in your life that hinder that.
Yeah.
Well, what's the audience saying, Ben, on that?
Let's see. We got a lot of great points and commentary here from the audience. Keep those coming. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what we're talking about. I'm getting a little emotional over here. I love it. I'm like one of those people, like if you laugh every day and you cry every day, it's been, it's a good day kind of thing. Like,
Absolutely.
Robert Brizuela, and everything, therefore treat people the same way you want them to treat you. Janet Turner giving a shout out to Annette Walters. Annette's great. Has been so helpful to me about loving and or changing relationships in a healthy, good way. Teresa, remembering that there is always a reaction to what we do say, whether that is what we want to hear or not. We have to be prepared to accept whatever that response will be, as we want others to accept what we do and say. Tom, the whole piece about outgrown relationships is pivotal. And in hindsight, I wish I'd been more aware of this in my 20s and 30s. This goes back to the sum of the 5 people around you, right, influencing you, and being intentional about curating that inner circle. Because it is foundational and everything is kind of built on that, and same thing with family, right? I mean, family's the foundation. If anything were to happen to my wife or kids, the rest of my life would probably fall apart. They left this morning, and I'll tell you what, if I wasn't leaving tomorrow, I'd be a complete mess by Saturday. I tell you that right now. So I've done that. Christina saying, Tom Bruce saying, I've only now started to understand that those relationships aren't really helping me grow to achieve my dreams. And then Vinny, who's just totally oblivious and loves everything and everyone at all times. Cheers. Vinny, I love you, man.
Happy with everything.
That's I love it. Love it. Yeah. But it's true. And the thing that we keep, the theme I keep hearing over and over today is, it is our choice, Ben. It's our choice who we elect to be in that circle, those 5 closest people we spend the most time with. It's our choice to create boundaries that Shayla's described here, and how we exit some of those unhealthy relationships. It's our choice to be able to say, Mike, that, I made this decision and I'm going to stay with that decision until something changes that I feel is going to benefit my family unit.
Right.
And
so now we're talking about, subtracting people from the equation that are bringing us down. Since this is kind of mentorship series,
yep.
I don't want to steal your thunder, Sadie, but I really want to ask this question. What about adding? How do we find the right addition to the equation?
Great segue, Ben. Great. And
did I do good, Sandy? Did I do good?
You
Great.
did really well. I'm impressed. And so, Shayla, I'll hand that one to you first. We've all actually got our ideas here.
Sure. And so actually, let me bring this really specific to global mobility and our day-to-day work lives first. And of course, it's going to apply larger. But when I joined global mobility, I had never done anything with it before and came on as the leader of one of the largest programs. And so I didn't know what I was doing. And so to build relationships in the industry, I first started stalking a lot of you all on LinkedIn and connected with you that way. And then started going to all the conferences and met a few amazing people like Jack and others that helped me meet a lot of people in the industry. And what I would do is literally I'd go to a conference, I'd look at the speakers. If they said something that I thought was really smart or insightful, I'd then stalk them afterwards, say, can we grab coffee? We'd grab coffee at the event, and then I'd start stalking them on the phone regularly afterwards. I would also look for people in the audience who ask smart questions. And I would literally write down, right, like tall guy, blue shirt. And then I would wait, because, sometimes there's like 300 of us in a room, right? I'm like, I'm never going to find the person who raised their hand on that side of the room again. And I would, do the same thing. Can we get coffee while we're still here? And then can we have a call? Then when I got back, I'd have the call. We'd explore whether or not it's mutually beneficial, right? Do you have any commonalities with your program and my role to your role, et cetera? And I made all my vendors say, if you want to be a strategic partner, part of what I expect is that you can help introduce me to my peer set, right? And I found that really valuable. You guys know everybody, right? Mm-hmm. So help me meet everybody. And so then what I did is I actually created a rotation. I never told anybody this, but I created a rotation where like every Tuesday morning at 9, I was talking to an industry peer. And so it was like a 9-week rotation. Nobody knew that that's like the frequency because I had 9 different friends that I had, created relationships with. And I'm telling you, it was invaluable to me because whatever was going on in my business right then, I could say, have you ever dealt with this before? And why try to learn the hard way, right? When you have all these industry peers that have done it for so long and faced all of these situations and came up with all these cool, unique solutions, why would you not tap into that? Mm-hmm. So that was a way that I was really able to, so here's another one of your Tony Robbins or Dean Graziosi sayings, but turn decades into days.
Right.
It's by finding people who are already really good at what you want to be really good at. Right. And learning what they're doing. And so that really helped me in the industry. And I think that you can use that same mindset in life. So Ben, if what you're wanting to do now is be I don't know, what do you even call this? Be a host online.
Unemployed podcaster.
I'm like,
he is an online TV personality.
So yes, there you go. Here's what I struggle with because I'm like, it's not a podcast because there's video, but it's not a vlog because it's live. So it's a show, like, right, whatever. But then, so if this is like what you want to do and grow, and I don't mean it has to be your whole thing. It could be some area that you want to try that's new and master. Then how do you find people who are really amazing at that thing, already have proven success and create relationships? And I think when I tell people to do this in whatever new industry they're in, they're always like, why is somebody going to answer my call from some random person? But I'm telling you, Sandy answered my call, right? And Sandy was happy to talk with me and help me and connect me to the industry, even before we ever did business together, right? Absolutely. And I think that people will surprise people in how much they want to help, which we shouldn't be surprised by because we want to help, right?
Right.
And it should be mutually beneficial. And so I think you can do that in your work life, but you can also do that with any area of your life that you want to improve is just seek out the people that are already doing it, ask for help.
I think, Shayla, the first portion that you said, I would have thought as a supplier is unique. You were new you were running a big program. You went to your suppliers or potential suppliers and said, if you want to work with me, you got to introduce me to my peers.
I mean, it wasn't quite the like threat
Well,
or
I
quid
get
pro
that.
quo, but
I get that, right? You leverage these people.
add more value
Because
for me.
quite
Yeah.
honestly, as a supplier, we do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So we talk to our clients that love us and say, hey, do you know XYZ over at so-and-so? Because I would love to get to know them. I know of them. I don't know them. I don't have a relationship with them. And they're like, oh, yeah, I went to college with them. So, yeah, I'll reach out right now. And next thing you know, we're all friends. We're out having a cocktail together, and we're talking about business and friends and our family and everything else. So that's really I didn't think that the corporate world was doing the same as what the supply chain world was doing. And so,
I mean, I think we need it. And to your point too, like
absolutely.
to me, a strategic partnership is about us coming together and having this great relationship where I believe in your service, right? And I think you're performing at a high level, and I give lots of feedback. Anybody who has worked with me knows. But then it also means that as soon as I'm satisfied with what you do, I'm telling the world about it, right?
Yeah.
And I have all my corporate friends, and I'm happy to be an ally and advocate for you. And so that's why I just met, I had a lot of success with Franklin Covey when I worked for Boeing and doing some programs there. And the other day, I just had, my, the account leader there reach out to me and ask for an introduction, and happy to, right? So I did 5 introductions instead of the one he asked for, and told the history and did the warm welcome. And then he's like, let me send you something. I'm like, no, I don't need anything. That's the whole point of a partnership, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that when I call you and say, hey, Mike, I need to know somebody who also has a, in-house program who also does X, Y, and Z, help me find the right peer.
Done.
Then I know vice versa. When you say, right, like,
Yeah.
hey, we're really trying to get in here. I don't know anybody there who you know. Then I'm happy to say, well, of course, that's John. Let me introduce you.
Yeah.
Right.
There's got to be that level of trust and respect before that can go on. So that's part of the mentorship, right? So what we want to do is with the salespeople at ACE, the new salespeople at ACE, it's you got to get out there. You have to somehow find a way to get out of your shell, right? So a lot of people start off doing what I do in residential sales. That's what I did. You do, we call it COD, right? When people are back in the old days, when I started, there was yellow page ads. And I know that's dating me, but these are the people that are paying for their own moves that aren't, some of them are lump sum, they're getting cash, but nobody really knows it because they've contacted the moving company directly. So they're so comfortable sitting at the kitchen table. I got a guy here right now who is incredibly confident and super knowledgeable guy and could do corporate sales like that. He just doesn't want to. He really doesn't. He really enjoys the way he does it and how he does it and controlling his own time. But if they wanted to get into it, my recommendation is get on Ben's show. Listen to these people. Understand what they do. Go to the conferences, meet people. I'll be more than happy to introduce you to them. Learn as much about the industry as you possibly can, because the thing that you have to give these people before they know who you are and before you can earn their trust and respect is knowledge. Because if you can give them something that they need, if you can help them with resources or contacting another person that might be in their industry that they can get more information from, right? Introduce me to some of my peers. Come up with some creative solutions that could benefit them. That's how I started, really how I started in this. I wasn't signing any new business. I was working with tons of clients that weren't clients. They were asking me, can you help me write a policy? Can you help me with this? Can you, all of these things. And then eventually it was like, it's time, right? I now have the opportunity, and you have done so much work for me, and you have made me look so good to my bosses. You've earned this spot. You've earned the opportunity to come in. So let's make this happen. So I think, and Sandy, we had talked about this yesterday. I love the saying that once you've reached the top, which, by the way, I don't believe there ever is a top, but once you've reached the top, it is your duty to send the elevator back down for the next person. Well, there's a problem with that saying, and that in most cases, not all, but most cases, there isn't an elevator, right? There's stairs to be climbed. right? You can't just hop in the elevator, press the penthouse, and show up at the top. It's just not going to happen for most people. So you got to put in that work. You got to learn your product. You got to learn the industry. And it's not just learning moving and storage. You got to learn the pain points of the global mobility manager and what they're experiencing, right? It's not just knowing how to pack a shipment or how long it takes to get from Virginia to California with a shipment. That's just part of it. It's understanding the broader perspective of what it is that the industry does, corporate housing, destination services. Learn it all. Get to know these people, because the more you know, the better solutions you'll be able to give to your prospective clients. And then you'll earn their trust and get the business. So that's how I mentor the people here.
Yeah, that's awesome, Mike, and I'm sure they love it. I know I would. You know, Shayla, when I think about the way you described the way that you stepped into that big role that you had with, you know, not a ton of context, and just, you know, what I keep hearing about your approach is you're so intentional about it.
Mm-hmm.
And not only are you intentional, but then you scale it. Like, it's not like I'm just going to have a meeting every Tuesday, you know, once a month with a mentor. It's like, I'm going to pick 9 people that I think are smart, and I'm going to, you know, like that scale, like, and I think you said something about decades into days, and I didn't really catch it, but I think it means like shortening the iteration, the curve, the learning curve, right?
Yes.
I mean, I can't tell you. And then this here, I'm just picking up all these gems. And then to see in the comments here, Christina saying, I love this. I've always been afraid to ask for help or advice, but in the past 3 months, I've been asking, and the results are just insane. And you had said something before about, you know, people are hesitant to ask. I think Christina was saying she was hesitant to ask. And what came to me was, you know how we say assume positive intent.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think you could also assume positive outcome, right? If I reach out to this person, they're probably going to say yes, not no. I'm going to default to yes. I'm going to default to positive outcome. It kind of goes back to the whole mindset thing we were talking about. And this is the biggest key to unlock my career thing too.
Yeah, Ben, that's such a perfect connection point, because that's the whole thing. It's a certainty mindset and understanding and expecting the best outcome to come. Not being really specific on, I know this conversation with this human is going to go perfectly, but I know I'm going to build an industry, a peer group that's going to help me understand everything so I can advance my organization, right? Like, I know that will happen.
Right.
It may or may not be with Tom. I don't know. But that just helps me pick up the next phone too, right? If that doesn't work. And that's with anything in life, is knowing that at the end of the day, it's going to work out. So one thing I'll maybe leave with is Tony Robbins' model is the certainty model. So it starts with how certain you are about something. The more certain you are, the more effort you put in. The more effort you put in, what do you know? The better results you get. The better results you get, the more certain you are. That works exactly the same. You mentioned this at the beginning, as if you're uncertain. So if I'm uncertain about something, I put in less effort. When I put in less effort, I get worse results, right? When I get worse results, I go, see, I told you it wasn't going to work. Then that's a terrible cycle. Yeah. But what I'd say is the one piece missing from that, that we really cover in my mindset programs, is that where does your certainty come from? Right? So we have to go 2 steps behind that. And the piece that is most important for people to realize is that when you think about the outcomes you want, we typically say, what are the actions I need to take? And we all come up with this list of everything I need to do to get the outcome I want. And actions to create outcomes mentality doesn't work. You have to go backwards. What makes you certain? And that's your thoughts and beliefs. So no matter what you want to happen, don't start creating the list of action items. Go to, what thoughts would I need to tell myself? What would I need to repeat to myself all of the time to believe that would then make me believe that I'm going to be good at this, that would then help me to create the right list of actions that would then help me get the results I want and put me into that model. But it all starts with thoughts. So actions to create results does not work. Everything begins in the mind.
I love what you're saying, and I'm sorry. I'm going to plug faith for just a second, because like faith is like belief in the absence of like hard evidence. And to start the certainty cycle off, you got to have that faith, right? Like you have to kind of, to some degree. I know you said this is not toxic optimism or whatever, and maybe I don't know the difference, but it's like you have to kind of believe in the absence of like fact
proof
that this is going to work out. You know what I'm saying? To get that, to really jumpstart that certainty cycle.
And Ben, you said something earlier that I think this relates to, is it's like, how do I believe when I don't know yet and I don't have the results yet? Well, there's bridge thoughts. And one of the things that you can do is you can say, when have I ever been in a situation before where I didn't know what the hell I was doing and I figured it out anyway? Right. And so what you know is that you can go into something new, you can learn it and be successful. So now you're going into something else new. You know that you like to learn, you like to work hard, you can figure things out, you're smart, whatever those things are that you know to be true because you've proven it to yourself previously in other categories, those can be your bridge thoughts. So we're the ones that make the most sense for you and say, yeah, I've been here before. Hey, I knew nothing about global. So here's a personal example. I knew nothing about global mobility, figured it out. Right. Well, then 2 years ago, I was asked to come into a role and lead our mergers and acquisitions integration team. I knew literally nothing about M&A, nothing. Right. But I knew that I've been put into a situation before where I knew nothing and I know how to learn. And I know how to ask questions.
And you know what's critical to making that happen is being able to tell those positive outcome stories as well as we're always telling those negative in our head. We have to get just as good or better at telling those positive outcome stories, right? If people talk about that for the job interview, well, you better be able to tell the story of how you got from here to here. But we also have to tell ourselves those stories on a daily basis, right? I was in this category,
100%.
I was successful. Now, therefore, I must be over here.
Sit down, Karen. You've done this before. You'll do it again.
And you know, what's the old saying? You know, what we do we get rewarded in public for what we do privately in practice. And so, you know, we got to practice this stuff. It's intentional, to your point, Sheila. If we do not, I love that, Stacy. You see it when you believe it, right?
Yeah.
But you have to understand that those thoughts are critical on that.
Yeah.
So.
That's Stacy's giving herself a little shout out for that's an ism right there. That's a quicken ism right there.
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
Another quickener here. Anthony's singing Faith by George Michael. Bridget Ritchie's giving us a pop quiz. Pop quiz, everybody. Faith is believing in things when common sense tells you not to. One of my favorite quotes, name the movie. Anybody?
Oh, name the movie.
I don't know.
Faith is believing in things when common sense tells you not to. Anybody in the comments want to throw that in there? Bridget throwing us a curveball.
That's a good one, Bridget. I love it.
I don't know. It's good though. It's good. And then lastly here, Elizabeth Martin says, my real life has changed so much in the last few months. Lots of people to thank and social platforms. Took 5 years, but it's a start.
DJ Lizzie Beats.
Yeah.
I will say this in parting. If you have a question, there are a lot of people out there wanting to give you the answer. We just don't know you have the question, because those who want to give you the answer, it makes them feel good. It's like feeling good giving somebody a gift on Christmas versus receiving the gift. It's Absolutely. That kind of feeling. So it is the caring love in Relo on Love and Relo.
So true, Mike, and that's a great way to close up the conversation today. Shayla, Mike, it's been beautiful to share this time with you. Ben, I can't thank you enough. It's a wonderful life. We should have known that, Bridget.
Great movie. Yeah,
wait, she was wrong. She got her own.
Oh. She was Googling that. I know it.
Only Bridget can get away with that. I love it. And to your point, Mike, you are so right. I cannot tell you how many people have reached out to me in the last few weeks and said, how can I help? How can I help? And how can I be a mentor? So I ask the audience, I invite each of you to share with us, share with Ben and I, to say what you're looking for as we continue to continue the series. In 2 weeks. We'll be back on the 29th of July. And we're putting together now a whole corporate session that these individuals are really passionate about, if you will, mentoring folks that want to go into the corporate world. So I think that's going to be a wonderful, wonderful session. And you know, what's the ultimate goal? At the end, we're looking for folks to match up in mentors in some kind of cohorts organically. We don't want this thing to be tough. It's not, we need another job. We just want the industry to continue to thrive. So Ben, thank you. Your heart and your serving heart. we thank you as an industry, because without this, we wouldn't have this platform to get this message out. And Shayla, short notice on popping in here. I knew you would be a superstar on this. And I so thank you for that. Mike, I knew your heart would serve here. So thank you. And
thank you, Sandy.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Shayla. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody that got active in the comments. The show was so much better with you in the comments. We couldn't do it without you. I don't even want to end the show. Honestly, it was so great. I don't even want to end it. I'm sorry. We got to end it. We got to end it. I'm going to end it with this comment because it's hilarious. Bridget Ritchie, in my defense, I'm on drugs. LOL.
I know she had her wisdom teeth pulled. I do know that. So we'll give
Love y'all, everybody.